From the very beginning, Amara had always been different. In a small, sun-drenched village nestled by the rocky hills of eastern Nigeria, where the rhythm of life was slow and gossip traveled faster than the harmattan wind, everyone knew everyone's business. So when Amara, the jewel of the village, graceful, educated, and kind, announced she was marrying Nana, the man nobody wanted, tongues wagged endlessly. Nana was an enigma. He was a quiet man with a hunched posture, deep scars along his arms, and a pair of sad eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world. Rumors about him were as plenty as the grains of sand on the village paths, that he was cursed, that misfortune followed him like a shadow, that he had once been possessed and never fully healed. Mothers pulled their daughters away whenever he walked by, and even the children made signs against evil behind his back. "You are throwing your life away," Mama screamed the day Amara brought Nana home to seek her blessing. Her voice broke with a pain so raw that it shook even the sturdy wooden doors of their family compound. But Amara stood firm. She had seen something no one else cared to notice. Beneath the battered exterior and the heavy silences, there was a man who loved fiercely, who listened intently, and who treated her with a tenderness that no suitor with fancy cars or fat pockets ever did. On their wedding day, few attended. The chairs were empty, the village square barely decorated, and even the sky seemed to brood, hanging heavy with the threat of rain. As they exchanged vows, Amara could feel the invisible weight of judgment pressing down from the few eyes that dared to watch. "You will regret this," a neighbor whispered as she passed by, shaking her head. But as Nana gently slid the simple brass ring onto her finger, Amara's heart was filled not with fear, but with a strange, unexplainable peace. They moved into a modest clay house at the edge of the village, bordered by thick forests where cicadas sang at night and owls hooted in the shadows. Their days were simple, tending the small farm, weaving baskets to sell at the market, and sitting under the mango tree as the sun sank behind the hills. Yet strange things began happening almost immediately. First, it was the dreams, vivid, unsettling visions of a woman crying by a riverbank, always dressed in white. Then, objects in their home would shift without anyone touching them, a calabash moving from one shelf to another, doors creaking open in the stillness of the night. And always, there was the cold, a creeping chill that no fire could chase away. Amara tried to dismiss it as imagination, the mind playing tricks after hearing too many village tales. But deep down, unease began to creep into her soul. Nana would say little, merely tightening his arms around her when she woke from a nightmare, whispering, "You are safe with me." Yet something told her that safety might just be an illusion. And what she would soon uncover about Nana's past would shatter everything she thought she knew. The whispers grew louder. At first, it was only in Amara's dreams, the soft, sorrowful voice of a woman pleading, "Help me, find me." But soon, even during the day, when she worked alone in the cassava fields, she would catch the ghost of that voice on the breeze. It was as if the earth itself was trying to tell her a story buried in silence. One evening, after a particularly restless night, Amara decided she could no longer pretend everything was normal. As Nana worked outside repairing their broken goat pen, she rummaged through an old, battered trunk he had brought with him when he first moved in. Beneath faded clothes and cracked leather sandals, she found a small, locked wooden box. The box felt heavy in her hands, heavier than it should for its size. And it was warm, almost as if it pulsed with a life of its own. Later that night, when Nana was fast asleep, Amara pried the box open with a kitchen knife. Inside, she found two things: an old photograph of a beautiful young woman, not much older than herself, standing by a riverbank, and a delicate beaded necklace stained with something dark and rust-colored. Behind the photograph, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Forgive me, Adana." Adana. That name rang like a funeral bell in Amara's mind. It was not unfamiliar. In hushed corners of the village, the elders sometimes spoke of a tragedy years ago, of a girl who had drowned mysteriously in the river, her body found days later entangled among the reeds. Whispers said it had been no accident. They said she had been betrayed. Amara's blood ran cold. The next morning, she confronted Nana. At first, he refused to speak. His face closed up, darkened by a pain so deep it seemed almost unbearable. But Amara pressed him, her voice shaking with fear and anger, until finally, he broke. Adana was my betrothed, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We were young, foolish. I loved her, but I allowed fear to destroy us. He told her that he had once been a proud, ambitious man, desperate to climb higher in the eyes of the village elders. When powerful men sought Adana's hand, men who could promise wealth and titles, he betrayed her love, abandoning her on the eve of their traditional marriage. Humiliated and heartbroken, Adana had gone to the river where they first met, and never returned. Nana's shame had followed him ever since, twisting his life into a shadow of what it might have been. Every rejection, every misfortune, every dark rumor, all of it had been his silent punishment. I never loved again, he said, tears streaming down his scarred cheeks. Until you. Amara sat there, numb, as the weight of his confession settled between them like a dense, poisonous fog. The dreams, the whispers, the cold, they were all Adana's spirit, crying out for the justice she never received. And now, by choosing Nana, Amara had stepped directly into the center of a story that was far from finished. The question clawed at her soul, could love truly redeem a haunted past? Or had she unknowingly tethered herself to a curse that would never let them go? For days, the air in their home grew heavier, almost suffocating. The once gentle nights under the mango tree now felt eerie, the shadows longer, and the silence filled with an invisible tension. Amara could no longer ignore it. Adana's spirit was restless, and she would not be silenced. One night, under a full, bruised moon, Amara made a decision. She knelt by the edge of the forest, at the place where the earth met the river's breath, and she called out, her voice trembling. Adana, wherever you are, hear me. I am not your enemy. I seek peace, for you, and for us. The wind rose sharply, whipping the trees into a furious dance. The river, usually calm, roared as if awakened from a long slumber. And there, standing at the water's edge, she saw her, a figure dressed in white, hair matted with riverweed, eyes dark as midnight. Adana's gaze was not filled with hatred, but with a sorrow so deep it seemed to bleed into the world itself. Amara bowed her head, tears streaming down her face. I am sorry for what he did. He carries his guilt every day. Please, let him find forgiveness. Let yourself find peace. The spirit stood unmoving for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, Adana's form began to dissolve into the mist, leaving behind only the faintest scent of wildflowers and rain. The next morning, the change was undeniable. For the first time since their marriage, the house felt warm, almost welcoming. The heavy presence that had gripped their lives for weeks seemed to have lifted, leaving behind a fragile, tender hope. Nana watched Amara as she prepared their morning meal, his eyes filled with wonder and something more, something like healing. For the first time, he spoke openly of his past, not with shame, but with honesty. Together, they decided to honor Adana's memory, building a small shrine by the riverbank, a place of remembrance and prayer. Slowly, the village began to change too. Word spread of Amara's strange bravery, not only in marrying Nana but in facing the unspoken truths that had long festered in silence. People began to greet Nana with cautious smiles instead of fear. Children no longer crossed the street to avoid him. Even Mama, after many months, came to visit, embracing her daughter with tears and apologies. But Amara never forgot. She knew love was not just about the easy moments, the dances under the stars, or the laughter shared over yam porridge. Love was about standing firm in the face of ghosts, both literal and within the soul, and choosing to build something new from the ruins of what was broken. In choosing the man nobody wanted, Amara did not just find love. She uncovered truth, healed old wounds, and gave a wandering soul the peace it had long been denied. Sometimes, the greatest treasures are found in the places everyone else is too afraid to look. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to love the one the world has already thrown away.